All right, so tonight we have a new addition to the shop. Oh, it's a little dirty. This is the Spyderco Endela. This is technically a size between the Delica, which you can see is a little smaller, and the Endura, which is the big boy. And I will say that it's a little closer to the Endura size than I expected it to be. But you can see it's about middle of the ground, middle of the road. That's lined up in the handle. Let's see. This, of course, is a black DLC blade as opposed to these, which are satin. Which I generally prefer, but I figure a little bit of little change of pace is a good idea. So anyways, tonight I've already tuned these where I've reduced the spring tension in the back lock and reduced the spring tension not the spring tension, but just made it smoother to close. But basically you adjust one spring in these, which is the back lock spring, and it makes them smoother to close and obviously loosens the back lock. And these being a back lock, you don't have to worry necessarily as much with the integrity of the lock being compromised in any way, whereas something like a liner lock, you might be a little more worried about that, but I don't have a liner lock on the table right now. But I tuned both of these to pretty good success. I like them. They're a lot more enjoyable to open and close with one hand. A lot simpler, just a lot nicer to hold, a lot nicer to use. So I'm going to show you how we did that. And since I just got this one tonight, we are going to take it apart tonight. Pretty straightforward here. Just gonna get our Torx. Oh, that one's already quite loose. You could tell the previous owner, I got this used. Probably trying to make it a little easier to open and close, and this is how I discovered that this is the best way to do it. I had never messed with these back locks, or lockbacks, whatever the hell you want to call them. Back in my day we called them lockbacks, which is a traditional knife. One of the most traditional knife locks there are. In fact, I think it's basically the first. Until I started getting these lightweight Spydercos, because I found that their lockback spring tension was a little high for my taste, which is fine for a lockback. You tend to want it to be a little more secure. It's a lockback, that's the design. But I'm a little bit of a stickler, being a Benchmade guy. I like to be opening close one-handed very easily, which obviously a lockback's a little more difficult in that regard. So I originally did it with the Endela, because when I got this one, or the Delica, because when I got this one it was a user. I didn't actually put that clip on, it came with the clip, but I kind of like it, so I've kept it on there. It came with the original as well. But this one was so stiff, I didn't even like to carry it because it was so annoying to open. You couldn't flick it really. First of all, it's a little small in my hand anyways to flick super reliably, but it was so stiff that I couldn't get it to flip. So I thought, oh hell, it's a user, I'll take it apart, see what it is, see what there is to it, and it was actually really straightforward. So I went ahead and did it to my Endura as well, which I've gotten all these. Oh shit, I just lost the screw. I've gotten all these knives used, and my preferred method of buying knives anymore. I used to buy all my knives brand new, and since getting a little older, I've come to realize it really doesn't matter. Especially if you're going to carry them, which I do these, but not a lot of my other knives. So I take everything apart, all the screws out of her. And we just take that off, and of course while we're in here, you can see all the grime. Yeah, maybe you can see all the grime. I'll let another light in here. There we go, you can see all the dust bunnies in there. Definitely a little dirty, which isn't really that important, but since we're here, I'm gonna give it a wipe down, clean it up a little bit. So basically, this is it for the knives. You got your handle scale, which of course this one is soaked in oil, which almost all of them have been that way when I've taken them apart. Which I think is also someone attempting to make them open and close, make the action a little smoother. Just doesn't really do anything. Hold on, let me turn my computer down a little bit. This guy's getting a little loud. Okay, so anyways, you get your little plastic handle scale, and then under that you got these metal liners. I find these can be a little tricky to get off of here, but you have to notice also one thing. You can see this red dowel. It's actually part of the handle scale of this side, and how it actually indexes into the metal liner of the handle there. That is actually, what you'll see in a second, going to be the one annoying part about this, because that actually acts as a reinforcement. There, you can hear it pop off right there. Okay, and basically just wiggle the scale off. There we go, a little bit of dirt. Focus is a little off, but you can see it more or less. So I'm gonna wipe it down. Okay, and now you can see what I was talking about. Here you can see, I need to bail out for pointing. Here you can see this is the lock, the actual lock bar, and where it engages in the blade right there. You can see it's just like a little, I guess you would call that a locking pawl. And when you push it, careful, this is a sharp one. You can kind of see, if I hold it here, oh, that's the guy we're going to be working with. You can see where it pops in and out of there. That's the lock. And it rotates on this, which is actually one of the screw holes. Rotates on that. My standoffs fell out. And this is the main spring, which is actually the only spring in the knife. It just fell out, but it usually sits in here. And let's see if I can recall. Oh, this has to be closed. Okay. Opened, and it sits in there, and when it is this might have gone the other way, as a matter of fact. No, there we go. This is where the tension comes from. You can see it's very stiff. I can't even, doesn't even want to even go in to the knife. Close the blade. Let's see, maybe I'll get a better idea. Yeah, this is all going tits up pretty quick here. Adding a camera to the situation is definitely making this more challenging. But the entire idea of this, backspacer's coming out, is that this spring is creating too much tension. That's the only spring in the knife. I got a hair in there, great, it's not mine. So to make it smoother, or to tune it, we just need to release some of the tension. It's a good lesson for all of us. Now, some of these you could probably just flip the spring over, because I think the other two that I've taken apart, the spring has been sitting inside the knife like this, where the point is up against the lock. And I think it was the Delica, or the Endura, it doesn't matter. One of them, I almost straightened the spring out completely to get a better action. This one, it looks like it might have been this way around, where the bend is downward. But I can't remember because it popped out before I got a look at it. So if I hold it here, it feels... That already, see, I think it might have been... Okay, you can see how it goes with the lock. I don't think that's how this spring was in here, because the other two that I've taken apart, the spring was in like this. Where the bend actually goes up into the lock bar like that. That's how the others have been, which makes a very stiff action, which I think is intended, honestly. But I can't even seem to get it in there like that. So maybe this one wasn't that way? I feel like I'm about to cut myself. Yeah, I can't even get it in there. Either way, I feel like I don't know. I feel like it almost had to be the other way, because this is so easy. This is about where I would, well, it's actually a little lighter than I would want it, honestly. So it basically eliminates the need for that bend in the spring at all with this orientation. As you can see, it's not even using the tip of the spring. The tip is just floating. The tip of the spring here is just floating out here. This is actually too light, so I can say pretty confidently that it was flipped the other way, which would be consistent with the other two knives that I've done this to. So usually all I would do is take the spring and straighten it. That's all I've had to do, which I would do that with, since talking about knives, I got my Leatherman rebar out. I grab it and simply bend it, just like that. And now you can see it's a lot straighter. So now we'd put it back in, if this was the proper orientation, which I still believe it was. And that feels about where I would want it right there. But you can see where this plastic little dowel point, it actually floats out in the middle of nowhere. It's just a backspacer. It's not actually part of the handle scale. I misspoke. So it's part of this backspacer. So that, I don't remember where the fuck this thing went. When you go to put the metal liner back on, you almost have to push it into place. See, it's not really lined up. Obviously, disengaging the lock is going to help in this case, which is what I would do, but... like that. And even then, you can see it's not quite lining up in there. So, what I had to do in the past... I'm not done, by the way. This is just a dry fit. I've had to grab it with this and pinch it, which I don't like to do because it does mess up the back of the backspacer. Again, these are generally users, but still not a huge fan of doing that. So whole thing is all wonked. Not sure what is going on with this thing. While I'm in here, we're going to go ahead and take this all the way apart. And wipe it down. Okay. A lot of discoloration on the blade. Some of it wiped off, but it's still a lot of discoloration on there, huh? And I don't know what this little L, I don't even know, you guys probably can't even see it, but you can, yeah, you can see it. A little cut in the blade. It's like an L. I don't remember seeing that in the other ones. It's interesting. Anyway, so let's go ahead and take this all the way apart and give it a full wipe down here. This thing is just loaded with oil. So I will say this is not a failure, but this is definitely more complicated. This spring is odd than the other two that I've done. Spring seems too stiff and then too soft in the flipped over orientation. Oh, I was going to say you could just flip the spring and call it done, which is what I was going to do. But it's not stiff enough. It seems a bit off. Okay. And this pivot is full of crap. It's like rust almost. A little bit of rust in there, I don't know. Should be some kind of discoloration. Okay. Put our copper washer back on. These are also pretty small. Or not very... Seems like they should be a little larger, but... What can I say? This is how I got it, so... So anyway, we have straightened this spring, which is generally all I do to tune these, and for those other two blades it was perfect. This one, just don't know. Feels good. I can't get this damn thing back on there. feel like I might have to grab that backspacer and torque on it. Or maybe I could push this guy down. Of course I have no proper tools here. It's a bunch of fucking knives. If I push it down like here, what I'm doing is trying to push down right here to get that notch to line up. If it's going to mar anything, the inside of the backspacer would be probably my first choice. I'm never going to fucking see that again. There we go. So now it just popped back in. Okay. How does that lock feel? Oh yeah. Feels better. Still a little tight. I don't know. I feel like it's definitely better, but it's not as nice as these. Well, no, it might be about the same, actually. It feels pretty close, anyways. I think what we're going to do is reassemble it. Let's see how it runs with the screws in place. Okay, pretty straightforward here. These you can go ahead and tighten down. They don't affect the action at all. You just go through the backspacer. This one up here, however, does affect the action. And you don't want to tighten it down too much. And also is the pivot point for the lockback itself. Now you can see it's drop shutty. Of course, obviously the pivot is not back in yet, but you can tell that's already better than it was. Generally, I don't put the pivot in very tightly, so that shouldn't affect it very much. In fact, it wasn't very tight when I took it apart. Tell the previous guy was trying to loosen it. Loosen the action a bit. So on the pivot, I shouldn't even have to use the screwdriver handle. Get snug with this. Okay, that's better. It's not drop shutting, but doesn't necessarily have to. But it could if we loosen this a little bit, maybe? Yeah. Okay. So you just push it and it drop shuts. No wiggle. It's actually impressive. Still a little stiff. But I also may have flipped those washers around. which means they will have to wear in, but there was so much wear on them already. I figured it would be fine. Just a second here. It's better. Just a little bit of lube. I like to try and get it. There's a notch in there. I don't know if I can even show you this, but I could try. The lock notch. In the blade, and you can kind of see it in there. That's where I like to oil it. It's the closest to the pivot. Drop, drop. And that should have got some on the lock face as well. Oh yeah, that feels better. It's definitely better. Okay, so that's it. Just straightening that spring out. That's all these things really need if you're looking for this. I mean, some people might like a tighter action, I don't know. I think a lot of people are just afraid to take them apart, first of all, and not to mention start bending things. But obviously I'm not afraid of stuff like that. So, pretty straightforward. I think I'm going to go ahead and put the clip back on. I think I'm going to call this one good. Funnily enough, the clip is the only thing that has Loctite on it, on the screws. Definitely know I'm going to crank these snug, snug, snug. Check the centering. She looks pretty fucking good. Actually looks better than it looked when I took it apart. Cool. All right, and that's it for this guy.